We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Tuesday, and this podcast is going to be a little different than I normally do. Now, for those of you that normally listen to the podcast, you probably won't notice any difference because you listen to the audio and it's always the same. But a while back, somebody said, Mike, you should put your podcast on YouTube. Well, that would be fine, but it's just audio. The whole point of putting anything on YouTube would be have video as well. And they said, yeah, exactly. Do your podcast in video. And I always tell them the whole point of doing the podcast is that's where I feel the most comfortable. I don't have to have a camera in my face. I mean, frankly, from the time I was very young, I worked in radio for one very good reason. I'm really not built for television or video. Nonetheless, I've done it on TikTok, and people have asked me to do it now for the podcast, and I'm an attention whore, so I'll do what the fuck I have to do. So you're listening to the podcast in audio, but if for some freaky reason you need to see my face at the same time, well, just go to YouTube, Rational Boomer on YouTube. You'll hear the very same podcast, but it will be in video form. I hope you're fucking happy. But if this works out and people are interested in it, I'll keep doing it. It makes things a little more complicated, but, let's be honest. This isn't really hard work. It's just me talking. So we'll do what we have to do. We're starting a new week, of course, and there's a lot of shit going on. It's pretty crazy. And before we get into the news aspect of this, I want to talk about some emails that I've got. And as of late, we've been getting a lot of emails. This first one comes from Jamie. She's written a number of times. It says, hello and happy New Year, Mike. By the way, when you see me looking that way, it's because I'm reading something, okay? Hello and happy New Year, Mike. Billy is finally closer to your current post. I have to explain this. Billy is Jamie's significant other, and he's trying to catch up on some of the podcasts because he's back a few days. Okay, we got that. You mentioned the name Kazan, and I thought I would let you know I have a beautiful Shiloh Shepherd named Kazan for years until she had to be put down 3.5 years ago. Sorry, it is the New Year's Eve podcast, so you can see they go back a little while. Anyway, I will send you a picture of Kazan. Let's hope this year gets better, Jamie. She did send the picture of the dog. Dog, absolutely adorable, absolutely beautiful. I love dogs. I've said this to people before. I love all dogs more than most people because dogs you can count on. Dogs are loyal. They just want to hang out sometimes. I had a dog that I had to put down recently, was my best, not recently, a few years ago, was my best buddy, Buck. Big old yellow lab. He was like 110 pounds. He looked imposing, but he was the laziest, calmest, gentlest animal I've ever owned. And he and I were just buddies. We'd go out in a car, we'd hang out and watch TV, and cool guy. And it was a sad day when we had to put him down, but those days always come when you have a dog, especially a bigger dog. They don't tend to last as long as the smaller dogs. Anyway, thank you, Jamie, for the nice email. Thank you for the picture. It brightened my day. Anytime I can get a dog involved in my day, I'm good. All right, this next one comes from Brenton in Michigan. He's written a number of times. Evening, Mike. I'm not one to complain, but give me a break. I don't like to complain, but get ready, bitch. I'm going to complain. Today I was out grocery shopping and I stopped and paid a few bills, and it dawned on me. Food and just living has become really expensive. Not expensive like $1 here or there. My family of 4 has seen our expenses double last year. Schooling for my children has increased. My taxes increased. My insurance increased. Hell, my life insurance increased. I feel you, man. It is pretty expensive out there. It seems like prices go up, but our paychecks do not. This has been going on for decades. This is a big reason why all of a sudden people can't afford to go to college. What we pay in terms of a percentage of our paycheck is much larger now than it was when I was going to college. So this is why these kids have been saddled with these huge loans. He goes on to say, I got home and then I read something that pissed me off. McCarthy to start the process to expunge the Trump impeachment or something along those lines. What the fuck? GOP has proven to me once again they have zero plans to help a single person in this country, not even the toothless voter who put them in office. How does clearing the record of a bloated narcissist, washed up ex president put food on my table? How does helping Trump help lower my gas bill? Shame on every single person who voted these clowns into office, who in 2 years will cry that Biden hurt the economy and turn a blind eye to what the GOP is about to unleash and then vote them back in. What the fuck is wrong with people in this country who put up these trade in power? You have a guy who lied his way into office, and now there's an uproar. That's the GOP way: lie, steal, and cheat. Nothing has changed. Sorry for the harsh words, but I'm sick of the GOP and those who put them there for causing the very mess they claim others caused. Brenton from Michigan. And you're absolutely right, Brenton. Let me just tell you something. They threw this out there about expunging Donald Trump's impeachment. That's not going to happen. I don't even know that it could happen legally. I don't know that they can do anything once they've impeached him by way of Congress. I don't think that's even possible. But you have to understand about these Republican fucks. They're not saying things that they're going to do. They're just saying things to stir shit up, to stir up their base, get them excited, get them on their side. And you're absolutely right. The Republicans do nothing to help the people. I mean, they were elected and they are paid to serve this country and serve the people of this country, the people who carry this country on their backs, the people that pay the most taxes, you and me. But they refuse to do anything, and have for some time, at least since Donald Trump has been in office. They have been doing nothing but obstructing any kind of process to do anything for this country. And then they have the audacity to go to their toothless redneck dumb fucks and say, oh, it's Biden's fault. It's the Democrats' fault. And of course, these dumb fucks buy into it and they go, oh, yeah, let's vote Republican. It's like the other thing they've been talking about, taking away Social Security and Medicare. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That would be too devastating to everyone in this country, not limited to just Democrats. Their own constituents, the Republicans who live on welfare and Social Security in the South, the states that get subsidies from this country more than any other states in this country. They will be broke and destitute. And how long will that keep the Republicans in office? They know this. They just say this. They think they can blurt out these things and get everybody worked up. You have to understand that everything in the Republican Party is about fear. So they stoke the fear in hopes that you don't listen to everything or don't understand everything. And then they just forget about it. See, that's the one thing you have to understand. They are like bullies in the true sense. They make all kinds of threats, but they very, very infrequently carry through with those threats because they aren't legitimate threats. They aren't things they can do. We hear about all this stuff they're talking about in the House of Representatives. We even have the media coming out saying, oh, no, they're going to do this. But the fact of the matter is, unless the Senate passes it and Joe Biden signs it, ain't nothing going to pass. So why are we reporting this like it's devastating or it's scary or it's frightening? I don't get it. Well, I know why the media does it. They need to stoke that fear too. So you keep watching their fucking broadcasts. It is tiring to watch the Republicans do what they do. And I think we are making some headway here. You see, not all Republicans are like that anymore. Not that they aren't bad people, but they've seen how That concept doesn't work. They lost the midterms. They just keep losing when they side with Donald Trump and the Trumpism. So now they're stepping away from it. There's a small faction of people in the Republican Party, in the House of Representatives, that are MAGA fucks. And they're going to try to stir things up, create chaos. Because you see, the only thing they're interested in doing is taking down the country, literally turning over elections, overthrowing the government, and taking down this country. Because then they can come back with their authoritarian or fascist regimes and take control of this country. Why they want to do this, I have no fucking idea. I don't even know that they have any idea what they're getting into, should they even actually accomplish that. You see, that's the one thing about the Republicans that troubles me the most, is they're fucking stupid as hell. And I've always said this. I said, if somebody is dumb or doesn't know anything, but wants to learn and is willing to adjust as they learn, that's a good person. It's the people that think they're geniuses when they're fucking absolutely stupid. Now, those people are dangerous. That is a perfect illustration of Donald Trump and all these MAGA fucks that continue to follow him. Now, either they're incredibly stupid and they believe what they're saying, or they're just evil and they're using that as scare tactics to get people on their side. And the only people that they can draw to their side are the equally as stupid people. And that's what they've done. The MAGA base has become smaller and smaller every day. People are seeing what's happening. They're feeling the effects of these MAGA fucks, and they're losing power. They still have enough power to make noise and cause trouble and disruption and such, but it's starting to fade, and that's the good news. So you're right about MAGA, Brenton, and in terms of costs, it is troubling. Now, over my lifetime, I've spent periods of time where I didn't have a lot of money, and it was a struggle to put gas in your car to buy food for the family. I understand that. And because I'm as old as I am and I don't have kids at home anymore and I don't have to rush off to work and do all those things, I don't have those stresses anymore. But that doesn't mean I'm not sympathetic to it, because I have kids and I have grandkids and I have friends and grandnieces and nieces and nephews, and they're all younger and they're all struggling with the same thing. And it pisses me off. You know, when I see my family struggling, it really bothers me. I would rather struggle because I know how to handle it, I know how to deal with it, than see younger relatives of mine struggling. You want to help, but you can only do so much. I've done a lot for my kids and my grandkids, and I will continue to do a lot for my kids and grandkids till the day I die. Some people say, no, when they're 18, send them out. Fuck that. I want my kids to have a better life than me. I want them to be better men than me. And I want to give them the highest platform to jump off of. And if I have the means and ways to do that, you can fucking better accept the fact that I will do that. And of course, my wife is on board with that too, maybe even more so. But we are in a troubling situation because we have these problems, and it is tough to live. It's tough to pay bills. There has to be some changes going on soon, because it can't continue like it is. I talked about healthcare, for example. It gets higher and higher and tougher to afford. What happens when nobody can afford it? Well, these companies that have been grifting money off of us, stealing money from us, will have a problem too. They'll have to drop the prices. But we shouldn't have to wait for that. We have a government for a very good reason. They're here to take care of us, to make sure this government runs the way it should. And as long as Republicans have any control at all, there are going to be hurdles to get over just to get our government to do what they were put in office to do. It's fucking annoying. Very fucking annoying. And I feel your pain, Brenton, and hopefully things will get better. I think because the MAGA fucks are fading, because the Gen Zs and the millennials are becoming more and more powerful voting bloc, those people will find their demise coming very soon, and it can't come too soon. All right, the next email. Hello, Mike. My name is Allison, aka TikTok, Allie._cat0. So check her out on TikTok. And I feel like I know you, but it is only one-sided, of course. Hence this email to introduce myself. So hello, I was born and still live and probably will die in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have worked in healthcare for 35 years as a CAT scan technologist, and now in the twilight of my career, work for the Department of Defense at a military hospital on Nellis Air Force Base. I am single, an atheist, childless, and depend on no one but myself. I have one cat who runs my life and an obnoxious housemate that annoys the fuck out of me. I'm an avid listener to your TikTok content and handfuls of your podcast on Spotify. Thank you for inspiring me with all your insight and knowledge. I too am a baby boomer, February 1959, and you and Rachel Maddow, I'm assuming, have inspired me to learn more about the government and how it works. I have voted in most every election held, especially the presidential elections that have occurred since I was 18, thanks to my high school government teacher who told us it was our civic duty to elect officials that decides what happens to we the people and our communities. Never gave it another thought, just do my civic duty every 2 to 4 years and move on. Well, that was until Trump, of course. During his administration, I was glued to the news and in a high state of anxiety along with many other Americans. My housemate was a Retrumplicant until COVID hit. One son is a nurse and the other is a doctor. He was livid at how Trump mismanaged the pandemic from the get-go and how it affected his family. So it is the only thing he and I agree on. How much hate and disdain we hold for Trump at all. Anyway, while listening to your TikTok one evening, that was discussing the Retrumplicans trying to elect a House Speaker. I thought to myself, how did we get here? How did this happen? What can we do? Being a boomer, I like books. I ordered a couple of books on the basics of the U.S. government and how it works. I'm going to make it my new hobby to find out exactly what happens in Congress, the Oval, and the DOJ. Then I can talk some shit. I have a hard copy of the January 6th report and watched intensely all hearings. I listened to Rachel Maddow's Ultra, great podcast, and I got so angry discovering this was never mentioned in any of my classes I ever took in school or college. That really burns me that this information I never knew. I still get mad just thinking about it. So again, Mike, thank you for the inspiration to get a couple of books and get down to business on what government should look like versus what it actually is in 2023. I think we have lost our way and need to get back on track. I also feel way too many of us are ignorant on the subject of the U.S. government, and I personally am going to take the bull by the horns and do something about it. My mom liked to remind me that knowledge is power. I hope she was right. Until next time, take care and be safe out there in this crazy, unstable world we live in. Looking forward to your great TikTok content in 2023. Allison, aka Alley Cat. Well, thank you, Allison. And I think you make an excellent point. One of the reasons we are in the position we are currently in is because of apathy. A lot of people have talked about that over the years. We've all been apathetic about our government. Things just seem to go along without too much tumult and tribulations. And we just figured, well, the government will will handle it, and it's above our pay level, so we don't understand it. But just let them do it because they'll take care of it. And we did that for decades. Unfortunately, it bit us in the ass. Because of that apathy, we are where we are now. I mean, it's disturbing when you hear the things we hear about. Top secret documents that are supposed to be kept safe are now being found everywhere. There is There is no security with these documents, in spite of the fact we always believed there was to be. We thought that a president could go into the Oval Office and have some limitations and not do certain things and have to follow some norms. And God help him if he went over the top of those norms. But then Donald Trump comes in, does just that. We find out the government is toothless. There is no ramifications for him breaking laws in the Oval Office. And it frightens me about this country. If there are no laws and there are no rules for some people, it's hard to have a democracy. I mean, we're worried about maintaining democracy and this government, but do we even have it now? If our Supreme Court, our members of Congress, and people in the Oval Office, the very president of the United States, are not accountable for fucking anything, well, that's not how democracy is supposed to work. And if that's not how it works, then do we have a democracy now? I think we have something that resembles a democracy, but because of our apathy, we have let it go to shit. That's on us. That's not on the government. Sure, they committed the crimes, they created the corruption, but we let them do it because we were apathetic. So when somebody like Allison comes along and says, you know what, I'm going to learn some shit, I'm going to know some shit, I think that's an important message. I think it's something we can all do. I tell you what, prior to doing TikToks and this podcast, I was paying attention to politics because of all the shit that was going on with Donald Trump, but not as close as I do now. I really focus in on this stuff. I read everything. I listen to everything. I try to analyze it out. And I knew at the time when I was starting to do this that there were a lot of people out there that don't know what's going on. They're being misled by the media. And because they don't know what's going on, it's sending this country further down a fucking rat hole. So I thought, well, maybe if I do the TikToks and the podcast, I'll take the time to learn this, try to put it in a condensed version, and then provide it to the folks on TikTok and ultimately the podcast. And if I could catch enough interest or attention from people, maybe it would sink in with them and then they could pass it on to other people, and hopefully other people could pass it on to other people. And maybe over a period of time, we could make a difference. See, that's the thing about boomers, especially boomers with a reasonable mind like you and me. We're all in the later stages of our lives. The younger people want to push us aside, as young people tend to do. So that doesn't give us much power, in spite of the fact that there is a large number of boomers out there, like 70 million boomers. They want to push us off to the side, but with 70 million people that could vote in the next election, that's substantial. Now, probably half of those won't vote, and maybe another third of those would vote for MAGA. So the people that have a reasonable mind in our group, or people that are interested in our group, if we can give them the information they need so they know what's really going on and pass that information along, well, then maybe we can fucking do something. So that's the whole point of the Rational Boomer. And Allie, looking into this, taking the time to get an education about government. See, that's what Congress has loved. That's what the Department of Justice has loved. Don't worry about it. We got it handled. We didn't know a lot about what was going on in Congress. We sure as hell didn't know a lot about what was going on in the DOJ. And this is why Merrick Garland is in a tough spot now. It was easy to bring things into the DOJ and he might say, well, that's too tough to do, so we're just not going to do it. He didn't have to worry about what we thought because we didn't know shit. Well, the tide has turned here a little bit. In terms of January 6th, we've seen all the evidence. We can dig out all the evidence. We know what the fuck happened. So now somebody like Merrick Garland or Jack Smith, they have to be more accountable in this whole situation. They've got pressure from us, and hopefully that will help us to get some justice finally. That's one of the things we've lost a lot in this country, is justice. Oh, there's justice for we middle class people. But apparently, if you're wealthy, have a corporation, or have a certain amount of power, there's a different kind of justice, and you can get away with whatever you want. And that's the change we have to make as the people, we, the people of this country. And the only way we can do that is have knowledge, know what the fuck is going on, not allow them to slide things under the rug. If we know and we put the pressure on, that's going to change things. And over and above the Republicans and the MAGAs, we've got to eradicate the MAGAs. But that doesn't fix shit yet. That just puts out the fire. We still got a big problem in this government. And it's on both sides, Republican and Democrat. So let's put out the fire, but keep the pressure on to both parties to finally do what they're supposed to do. Now that we're knowledgeable, informed, we have the evidence in front of our faces. Now we can take them to task. All right, this next email comes to us from Daniel Choi. He says, "Hey, Mike, although your podcast topic of discussions are typically politics and your grandkids, this weekend starts the NFL playoffs." Oh, yes, I know. Although I grew up in Seattle, I have been a fan of the Vikings since the Fran Tarkenton days. He scrambled like no other. I swear he has eyes in the back of his head. I have my kids watch the videos on YouTube of Fran Tarkenton. It's almost comedic when you watch how much he scrambled and how he got away with things. It almost looked choreographed. Since the Seahawks were not as good in the late 70s, I was rooting for the Vikings. However, since the Seahawks got moved to the NFC, my opinion of the Vikings has lost some luster, especially after Kirk Cousins came out as an anti-vaxxer. As a team sport, he's being selfish SOB. Even after all the reported deaths from COVID, how can anyone with a sound mind avoid getting vaxxed, especially in a team sport? His rights affect the safety of the entire team and its opponents. However, on the other hand, I'm surprised the NFL is not enforcing vaccinations of all its players. You would think the NFL has a financial interest to vaccinate all players. After the Vikings lost, people of Minnesota may have lost their patience with Cousins. Although he puts up good stats during the regular season, he's not able to succeed in the playoffs. What are your thoughts on Kirk Cousins? Daniel of Los Angeles. I got to tell you, when I was a young man in the 70s, I was a huge Vikings fan. My world lived and died by watching the Vikings. If they won, I was in a good mood. If they lost, I was in a bad mood. But thankfully, as I got older, I became a little more mature and realized it's simply a fucking game. And after decades and decades of nothing but mediocrity out of the Minnesota Vikings, the Minnesota Twins, the Minnesota Gophers, the Minnesota Wild, the Minnesota Timberwolves, it's hard to get excited, you know? I've come to a point in time where what happened when the Vikings just recently lost in the playoffs to the Giants, my immediate thought was, well, Minnesota just being Minnesota. We maybe have a good season, but at the end, they'll rip your heart out. It happens every year. I become numb to it, and I don't really pay as close attention as I normally did back in the day. I mean, sometimes if it's an interesting game, I'll sit and watch it, but a lot of times I'll take advantage of the Vikings games, knowing that if I have to go shopping, that is the best time to shop because nobody is out there shopping. They're all watching the fucking game, getting disappointed or being excited. It just doesn't thrill me as much as it once did. Granted, I want the Vikings to win, and it's cool. And frankly, if the Vikings ended up in the Super Bowl, I'd probably jump on the fucking bandwagon quicker than anybody. But Kirk Cousins, you know what, Daniel? This last game, I can't blame Kirk Cousins. I mean, the offense put up 24 points. Fucking defense didn't do shit. And frankly, the defense has been problematic all this year. You know, a lot of people were raving about that greatest comeback in NFL history that the Vikings came back, 34 points, something like that. Yeah, that was cool. And that was amazing. But these dumb fucks got down 34-0 to a team that was kind of half-assed that's not even in the playoffs. So as much as that comeback was great, they should have never been in that position before. Now, at the end of the year, they had one of their better seasons in terms of their record, was 13-4. And that's cool. But I always said, as much as they have a good record, as much as they did play some good games and they had a lot of comebacks, they just didn't seem like a real good, real solid team to me. I never felt comfortable with them. You talked about the 70s. And when I think back to the 70s, I remember watching those Vikings teams and they'd be down by 21 points or something like that. But in my heart, I knew they were going to come back and win because they had the wherewithal to do that. I don't get that feeling from this current Vikings team. Kirk Cousins, he's a decent quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. When we signed him, we needed a quarterback, and they signed him for big money as if he was an elite quarterback. He wasn't an elite quarterback. He was the only quarterback available. He does a decent job, but there's something about him I don't like. The fact that he's an anti-vaxxer just added to that. I would like to see Kirk Cousins gone, but who are you going to bring in? We've had many shitty quarterbacks in this on this team, and it does us no good to put back a shitty quarterback at the helm. So the one thing I will give to Kirk Cousins, he never gets hurt. We had Teddy Bridgewater and he was out for 2 years and then we traded him or whatever happened. At least Kirk doesn't get hurt. At least he doesn't fuck up too much, but he does tend to choke in just the wrong time. I'll be honest with you, Daniel. There are bigger things for me to worry about than football. I do enjoy football. I love football. I played football. I watch football. My kids play football. I love it. But I sometimes get frustrated with our pro teams and even our college teams in this town. It's, we haven't had a championship season since 1991 with the Twins and 87 with the Twins. We were jacked up about that, but that's a long fucking time ago. We're talking 30 plus years. So I don't get too excited anymore. My wife always gives me a hard time. She loves the Minnesota Gopher football team. Her father worked for the University of Minnesota, and she went to all the games, and every year she's excited. And she's always dismayed that I'm not excited. And she says, why aren't you excited? It's a new season. We got this, we got that. I go, look, I was born in 1960. In that year, I think the Gophers won the national championship in the Rose Bowl. They were a great team. But since that time, through all of my life, and I'm 62, they've all been pretty mediocre seasons. So if my entire life has watched the Gophers be mediocre, why would I get excited? I know there's been a couple of years where they've been better. But ultimately, they haven't won a national championship. They can't even get a decent bowl. So excuse me for not getting excited when the new year comes around. All right, we've talked enough about sports. This one comes from Dave. Hey, Mike, Dave, the guy you met for breakfast in the cities with my 19-year-old kid. He says something here. Sounds weird. I don't know what he means by that. But anyway, yeah, there's a guy who lives in town. He reached out to me and says, hey, you want to meet for breakfast? I said, cool. He listened to the TikToks and the podcast. He said, can I bring my 19-year-old daughter? And I said, yeah, why not? And they were great people. And the 19-year-old daughter was cool as hell. So I was glad he brought her. Actually, it was far more entertaining. The fact that she was there. Two old guys talking about shit isn't really all that exciting. So he goes on to say, just wanted to drop you a line that I continue to listen to you every day with complete enjoyment. I appreciate how you informed, you keep me so that I'm able to talk logically and without anger to people that really just don't get it. Also, I wanted to let you know that now my 22-year-old son is listening to you consistently at his job. I also wanted to let you know how amazingly intelligent you make people sound. Hell, even me. Before the midterms, you were talking about how there was no way there was going to be a red wave. I began with this narrative as well. And when I would talk to my parents, I would share this information and they would say, I sure hope you're right, but it doesn't look good, et cetera, et cetera. I heard the same shit. Then after the midterms, when we got a chance to visit again, they said, you were right about the midterms. I can't believe it. I had to lay claim to you and not keep the accolades for myself. Thanks, you prick. That went dark quick. Seriously, thanks for all you do. Please keep the solid, sensible, and truthful message coming, Dave. Thank you very much, Dave. And you don't have to give me credit. Take the credit for yourself. I'm not just making this shit up. I'm reading it someplace too. So what the fuck do I know? All I'm doing is taking a look at the facts and coming up with a logical answer. There is no prediction here. There's nothing like that. I was going to tell you too, I had kind of an interesting, it struck me as very complimentary. And I'll tell you, I posted one of my TikToks on Facebook. And on Facebook, I have some people that follow me on the Rational Boomer Facebook that used to follow me on my personal Facebook. And this is a young woman I went to high school with. We both graduated from Roosevelt High School in 1978. And I knew her and I know her and I've seen her since we graduated. Wonderful lady. She's got a great family. And she follows me on the Rational Boomer Facebook page. And I did a TikTok and she responded and she said, I listen to your podcast every day. And it just struck me weird because I said to her, I said, it's interesting. It's very complimentary. I appreciate it immensely. But since you knew me in 1978 when I was a senior in high school, it's got to be weird for her knowing who I was back in 1978. I certainly wasn't talking about politics. I was probably talking about beer and dumb shit. So this has got to be quite a departure for her. So Elaine, thanks for the kind words and thanks for listening. All right. The last email, Mike, I don't know if you've mentioned this or not, but I'm thinking that the only reason the House has passed both the abortion legislation and the defunding the IRS legislation is to both campaign off of it and fundraise off of it. I know some Republican voters are dumb enough to believe that the House has accomplished something, but I hope the members of the House are smart enough to know that it won't pass the Senate. I agree with you about Kevin McCarthy. He won't survive the year as a speaker. I wouldn't be surprised if the debt ceiling is the fight that does him in. Tony Michael suggested that in the podcast yesterday, and I think he's right. I have a feeling that if he sides with the Freedom Caucus and tries to default the government, the moderate Republicans will get Democratic support and oust him. I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't already some talks going on in secret between a couple of moderate Republicans and Democrats about this. So if it does happen, they can get a new speaker on the first ballot. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised of that. In fact, I was a little surprised it didn't happen while they were in the 14, 15 ballots. Tony Michael said something yesterday, and it was interesting. He said two things. One I agree with, one I don't agree with. The one I agree with is it sounds like they're going to sacrifice Kevin McCarthy. This is Tony Michael's theory. McCarthy is going to get pressure from the reasonable Republicans. He's going to cut a deal with the Democrats. The debt limit will be raised and everything will be okay. And that, of course, will piss off MAGA. And MAGA will then use the motion to vacate. One person will step up and say, we need a vote of no confidence. And then McCarthy will get his ass kicked out. And that will be the excuse for kicking out McCarthy. And also setting the debt limit higher. You see, nobody wins on not allowing the debt limit to be raised and shutting the government down. It's not just poor people. It's not just middle-class people. It's the rich people. It's the corporations. It's economies around the world. The idea that they could shut down the government is fucking crazy. And that's another option that Tony Michael said. He said, or it could happen, well, they'll shut it down and it'll be shut down for 9 months. Theoretically, that could be true. I just don't seeing that happen. That doesn't make any fucking sense at all. There's no way that's going to happen. There's no way anybody will allow that to happen. If we get to that point, you're going to have some angry folks, and then we might see some violence, because this will impact everybody, not just Democrats, but Republicans too. So that's something to consider. All right, we're going to talk about some news, some of the shit that's going on this week, and we'll get to that right after this.